The New Orleans Saints could see two of their most important players back on the field on Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders. We got all of that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and Saints analyst with WWL TV. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to go through a little bit of the Christmas spirit here and take a look at my Christmas wish list for the New Orleans Saints. A little check for around $63 million might be helpful for anybody at Christmas time, but that could be and will be the case for the New Orleans Saints. Some good health is what everybody wants for around Christmas as they begin the new year as well. The New Orleans Saints could certainly use a bit of that. We'll go through those and much more that I have on my Christmas wish list for the New Orleans Saints going into their 2025 season. And to kick everything off today, some injury updates for you that are the biggest stories for the New Orleans Saints. Two offensive linemen potentially out for the rest of the season, the remaining two games, but two big stars that could potentially be back on the field this very weekend against the Las Vegas Raiders. We got all that and much more coming up for you. So whether you are catching us for your first time or your next time, we thank you very much for making us your first listen and for being everydayers here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Go ahead and check them out over at FanDuel.com. New customers put $5 down. If you win that first $5 bet, you'll win $250 in bonus bets automatically. Go and check them out today at FanDuel.com. So, big news for the New Orleans Saints, who could potentially see two of their most important offensive starters back on the field as early as this weekend against the Las Vegas Raiders. Maybe. We'll see exactly which way this one goes. I will say, don't get your hopes up around this, but there is a chance that the New Orleans Saints will have quarterback Derek Carr as well as running back Alvin Kamara back on the field on Sunday up against the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, it's a little bit of a long shot, but interim head coach Darren Rizzi told New Orleans media, including myself, during a conference call yesterday on Tuesday, Christmas Eve, that the New Orleans Saints might be getting a little bit of a belated Christmas present here recently as both the quarterback and running back have made some progress in their rehab. They're very happy with the way that they've kind of tackled the recovery, and both are trying to get back on the football field at some point this season in the remaining two games, and that could include as early as this weekend's matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. So Derek Carr, of course, would get the opportunity to go up against his former team. That's something that I've been advocating for. I think if he's ready to go, if he's able to protect himself, if he's able to protect the ball, take care of the football, all those things with that left hand. And when I say take care of himself, I mean, be able to brace himself as he goes to the ground, be able to protect the football, holding on to the football with two hands should he run into any contact, things like that. And there's a good chance he'd run into contact if he does return. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But you got to be able to do those things before you can get back out on the field. But Darren Rizzi, very clear that basically what they're going to do is they're going to go into this week's practices, which they will not practice today here on Christmas Day. They'll be back at practice on Thursday and Friday. During those practices, they're going to effectively try to simulate what it would be like if he were to play an actual game, make sure he gets that grip strength, the protective strength, the things that he needs with that left hand in process. And if he's able to clear some of those hurdles, there's a chance that he comes back against his former team, the Las Vegas Raiders. And of course, there's definitely some additional motivation knowing that those are his former team, the Las Vegas Raiders, over on the other side of that football. And so certainly that motivation could potentially want to, or get him to a point where he definitely wants to be back. The interesting thing here is that the Saints feel that they can protect the area specifically that was damaged. The interesting part of it is that what they're mostly concerned about is not necessarily their ability to be able to protect that area from further damage. More so instead, what they're concerned about is their ability to protect that area enough for him to be able to protect himself so that it doesn't cause additional damage anywhere else. Remember, there is a $30 million injury guarantee that sets in if he's not able to pass a physical. That's something to be aware of, although the New Orleans Saints are clearly not too worried about that if they're giving him the opportunity to get back out on the football field. Similarly, when it comes to running back Alvin Kamara was in Darren Rizzi's office Tuesday morning saying that he wants to be back at some point this season. The running back dealing with a groin injury that was minor early on in that Washington Commanders game, but then when he caught that touchdown, the spectacular one-handed stretch out catch, he ended up kind of tweaking it, making it a little bit worse. And so because of that, there is a situation here to where he was considered somebody that was going to be week to week. He could potentially have seen that be a season-ending injury with only 3 games left at that time. But it sounds like Alvin Kamara wants to be back this week. Expect that to be a later in the week decision, however. Don't expect that to be a Thursday first day of practice thing. That's probably going to be a Friday going into Saturday's walkthrough kind of decision that will be made around the running back. But of course, Alvin Kamara just 50 rushing yards away from his first ever 1,000-yard rushing season, about to go up against a hapless Las Vegas Raiders team and defense. A real opportunity for him to finally eclipse that 1,000-yard rushing mark. Obviously, there's some motivation for him to be there and be able to do that. So whether it's Spencer Rattler or Derek Carr at the helm, there is a chance that Alvin Kamara is right behind them, providing support in that run game, which of course would be huge in both of these matchups for showcasing what this offense can be, and of course showing potential head coaches what they might have with an offense that includes at least Alvin Kamara in the mix. Now, 2 offensive linemen could potentially be out for the rest of the season. That's center Erik McCoy, as well as left guard Lucas Patrick. I mentioned that if Derek Carr comes back, it does make sense that they want to make sure that he can protect himself, because he is definitely going to run into contact in this game if both of those guys on the interior are out again. That's going to take Erik McCoy to multiple games missed at this point, right? He was on injured reserve from weeks 3 until a little bit into going in that Cleveland game. I believe that was week 12. Then he missed week 13, aggravating that groin injury, and then had been back a little bit since then. But now dealing with an elbow injury that Darren Rizzi says is not surgical, right? So it doesn't need surgery there, and that he avoided major damage, but it's something that is going to jeopardize his availability here for the last 2 weeks. I would consider it most likely that he doesn't play again for the rest of the season. As for Lucas Patrick, it's a knee injury for him. He is seeking a second opinion, according to interim head coach Darren Rizzi. However, the expectation is that he also will not play for the rest of the season. So if Erik McCoy can't go, expect Shane Lemieux to be the starting center the rest of the way. If Lucas Patrick can't go, expect Landon Young to be the starting left guard the rest of the way this season. And of course, I should say, in case anybody has any questions about it, if Derek Carr can't go, the expectation as of right now, and Rizzi did confirm this on Tuesday's conference call, the expectation right now is that Spencer Rattler will continue to get reps and will continue to be the starter, which I think is a good move by New Orleans, because with 52.6% of his snaps last week on Monday night, against pressure or under pressure against the Green Bay Packers, I don't know how you can say you got a full evaluation of the guy when your starting center again went down just 7 snaps in that game, or a couple snaps in that game, tried to come back, only played 7 snaps in the matchup. So expect to see Spencer Rattler, expect to see Shane Lemieux, expect to see Landon Young, and more Kendre Miller and running back by committee if none of those guys are able to return next week. But certainly those 2 offensive linemen not looking so good in terms of their outlook. We'll see what happens with Derek Carr and Alvin Kamara throughout the week. Coming up next, let's get into our Christmas wish list, starting off with a big need for the New Orleans Saints, which is simply, as you can tell from this segment, good health. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, who are not looking favorably at the New Orleans Saints, even though they're at home against one of the worst teams in the NFL, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are actually favorites, 1.5-point favorites. And remember, that's with the New Orleans Saints being the home team, which usually gives 3 points. So the Saints, home underdogs against one of the worst teams in the NFL, as if it couldn't get worse for the New Orleans Saints outlook when it comes to the general outlook, right? The general sort of perception of the New Orleans Saints. Here we are, Thank you, Vegas. So if you want to get in on those odds, or maybe a heavy favorite this week, much like the Patriots were a heavy favorite, or the Bills were a heavy favorite against the Patriots, it's a great time to do that, especially if you are a first-time user of FanDuel, because you can put $5 down. If you win that, you get $250 in bonus bets by winning your first $5 bet. All you got to do is head over to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com will give you your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, family, it is Christmas after all, so it's time to go through our Christmas wish list for the New Orleans Saints. I hope you're having a Merry Christmas. I hope you're having a happy holidays, whatever it is that you celebrate. I just hope that you're healthy. I hope that you're well. And I thank you very much for checking out today's show despite the holiday. But, I wanted to make sure, I told you the other day, I don't care if it's Christmas, Christmas Eve, or double Christmas, you are getting a Locked On Saints episode. It is happening, and here it is for you. I want to go through, I got 8 points, 8 things on my Christmas wish list for the New Orleans Saints. I want to go through 4 now, and we'll go through 4 here in a second as well. Now, I want to acknowledge I'm doing a Christmas wish list, but a lot of things that I'm really talking about are things that I'm putting on the Christmas wish list for them now that will impact them in the offseason. So it's really an offseason wish list, but it's the spirit, right? So we're hooking up, we're getting this over to Santa early. Make sure that they got what they need going in over there. Hopefully it's Cajun Santa too. It's one of my favorites. Creole Santa is one of my favorites. All right, so let's take a look at good health. Fam. If there's anything that this New Orleans Saints team needs more than anything else, it's good health during a season. So I'm putting on the wish list right at the very top for the New Orleans Saints, good health for 2025 and beyond. Let's just kind of look at and quantify a little bit of the injury, luck, bad luck, outlook, whatever it is you want to think about, the impact, right? Injury impact so far this season of just the week 1 starters, right? That's not going to include people that started the season on injured reserve, like Tano Passanio, who was on the physically unable to perform list, Kendre Miller, who was on IR to start the season, not even including those guys. But the Saints, of 22 week 1 starters, 11 on offense and 11 on defense, plus Taysom Hill, so 23 players. Of those 23 players, 14 week 1 starters have combined for 63 missed games so far. So far. That's without including a potential 2 more games missed by Lucas Patrick, a potential 2 more games missed by Erik McCoy, a potential 2 more games missed by Alvin Kamara, and 2 more games missed by Derek Carr, all of which are possible. That's an additional 8. 2 times 4 is 8. We know this. That's an additional 8 games that could be missed. The Saints could see 14 of their week 1 starters missing 71 games combined by the end of the season. Yikes. The New Orleans Saints had their starting offensive line for 4 games? 4 games? That's all that they got, and maybe 5 games, but then Erik McCoy wasn't able to finish the 5th one. So huge. This New Orleans Saints team would benefit from massive improvement when it comes to their health. I know they made the switch from, or made a switch to a greater focus on sports science, but they got to figure something out over this offseason with their new coaching staff about keeping these players healthy. Look at the Green Bay Packers. They just played last week on Monday night. That offensive line has played every single game together with the exception of 1 game for their starting center. And you saw the cohesion, the familiarity, the continuity. That is where cohesion, continuity, familiarity actually ends up making a positive difference for you in season. New Orleans Saints, number 1 on the list, good health. Number 2 on the list, franchise quarterback. Now, listen to me when I say this, because I know that people are going to have an adverse reaction to that if they believe that a franchise quarterback is in the building. So let me say this the way that I intended. Whether it is a new addition or whether it's somebody that is in the building, realizing their potential, the New Orleans Saints need a long-term answer at quarterback if they want to turn any corners for an extended period of time. If you end up in a situation to where you get 1 or 2 good years at quarterback at best, even if you got fantastic quarterback play, if you only had it for 2 years, you're right back where the New Orleans Saints are right now, 2 years from now. What's the thing that I always say? Every day is remember this. What I always say is that if you are still trying to figure out your answer at the quarterback position, you are actively rebuilding as a football franchise. Every NFL coach, every NFL general manager that tells you we're not rebuilding, we're retooling, we're reloading, we're whatever, that's not true if they don't have a franchise quarterback. The Washington Commanders, Dan Quinn, said the same thing. They were just retooling over the course of the offseason. Yeah, well, you only brought back one defensive starter from last year to this year, and you nailed the franchise quarterback with the number 2 overall selection in Jaden Daniels. Homeboy, you were rebuilding. It's okay to say it. The New Orleans Saints are still in the process of their rebuild, as far as I'm concerned, until they have an answer at franchise quarterback, number 2 on the list. Number 3 on the list, a crystal ball. Just a little glimpse into the future for the New Orleans Saints. Why? So that they can get the hire of their next head coach right. The New Orleans Saints have seen 2 head coaches in the last 3 years, between Dennis Allen and then their interim head coach and Darren Rizzi. I don't know that you can sell Darren Rizzi for another year. I don't know that you can sell Darren Rizzi for a long time. I think the dude is awesome. I think he's personally great. I think that he connects extremely well with the roster. The coaching staff believes in him. The front office believes in him. The fans do love him when he's winning. But I think that the biggest thing is that the New Orleans Saints just need to turn the tide. They need new ideas, new approach, new innovations. They need new identity. They need a new personality, all of that. And you're not going to find that by continuing to fish in the same barrel, continuing to fish in the same pond. You have to travel the world a little bit. Right. And so I think that that's what the New Orleans Saints need to do. They need to do the external search. They need to do their due diligence. There's a chance that based upon everybody that they go out there, I almost said everybody that they go out there and interview, that would have been wild. That after they interview everybody, that they feel that Darren Rizzi is the best candidate, in which case remove that interim tag, full speed ahead with Darren Rizzi if that's the case. But if the Saints have a little crystal ball that tells them that actually this hire is better, that's what I think they need to do. They need that crystal ball. But truly, all jokes aside with the crystal ball, because obviously the Saints can't have that and can't see into the future when they make this decision, they need to really be diligent about what they do and how they make this decision. I think of the realistic candidates that we've already heard connected to New Orleans, Darren Rizzi, Aaron Glenn, Mike Vrabel, all that. I think that Aaron Glenn's a guy that still makes a ton of sense. And I know that that's kind of still fishing from the same barrel, but it is very different. Aaron Glenn is nothing like Dennis Allen. Dennis Allen is nothing like Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn's former NFL player experience changes everything as well. Big time motivator, a guy that the team rallies around, that the roster rallies around, all that other stuff. But I think looking at the offensive minds that are out there and available, obviously massive value in that. So you don't have to continue to replace offensive coordinators if you find success with a coordinator hire. But one crystal ball would certainly help them out a ton in terms of being able to make that decision. Lastly, for this segment, a speed pass rusher. Yes, I said it. The New Orleans Saints did a good job this year when it comes to quarterback pressures, right? Not sacks, but quarterback pressures. They improved from number 29 in the NFL to number 13 in the NFL in quarterback pressures 2023, 2024. Fantastic. However, the New Orleans Saints have generated the 7th fewest quick pressures, which are pressures that are created in under 2.5 seconds. The Saints need speed on the edge, somebody that's going to make opposing offenses game plan away from that player. I would put speed pass rusher on the New Orleans Saints wish list this Christmas as well. Coming up next, in order for the New Orleans Saints to find that future quarterback, to find that speed pass rusher, one of the things that they might need is around $63 million. Let's get to that next as we wrap up our wish list here on Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints also brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. It is Christmas Day after all, and over at PrizePicks right now, you can get started with Pickmas. So let me tell you a little bit about PrizePicks. It's super simple. It's daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 6 players. They're going to give you a projection, a stat projection for those players. So you might say like Jared Goff, 230 receiving yards, right? You might say Saquon Barkley, 1 touchdown, okay? All you got to do is pick more or less on those 2 to 6 players. And right now, throughout Pickmas, they're making it even easier for you because throughout the month of December, you get 2 free plays as well, and you get up to 1,000 times your entry. It's super, super simple. So head over to PrizePicks today so that you can go ahead and get started. You'll want to download the PrizePicks app and use that promo code LOCKEDONNFL. You're going to get $50 instantly when you submit your first $5 lineup. Don't have to win, don't have to lose, doesn't matter. It's guaranteed $50 instantly when you place your first $5 lineup over at PrizePicks with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. PrizePicks, run your game. Get it, Who Dat Nation? Who wouldn't love $63 million for Christmas? I know I sure would love $63 million for Christmas, but you know who really needs it is the New Orleans Saints. New Orleans Saints next on the Christmas wish list for them as we take a look at things that can help them out over the course of the offseason. But we're asking Santa a little early. It's around $63 million, right? A little tree fitty. But it's instead of tree fitty, it's $63 million. That's what the New Orleans Saints need. Because right now they're $63 million over the salary cap. But if there was a way to just hand them $63 million so that they wouldn't have to restructure a bunch of contracts, so they wouldn't have to kick the can down the road and do the whole thing in order to make salary cap space for themselves a little bit, then I think that I would definitely put $63 million on this list for the New Orleans Saints to help them out. So they go out there and find that speed rusher, right? I don't think you're going to find a future franchise quarterback in this year's free agency class. I don't think you're going to find a future franchise quarterback in this year's draft class either. However, it would help you for future years in terms of your ability to be able to spend now. It opens up your opportunities and ability to be able to have a better availability of funds so that you can spend later as well. We broke down on the show the other day that there is a way, if the New Orleans Saints decided that they wanted to part ways with Derek Carr, which 2 things have to happen in order for that to be the case. First of which is that you have to prove that you have a better option in the building at quarterback. So far, I think that they are trying to figure that out with Spencer Rattler, but they don't have that answer yet. The second thing is you kind of have to know what the head coach wants, right? The next head coach, the new head coach. Do they want Derek Carr as their quarterback? Do they not want Derek Carr as their quarterback? That could change every facet of the conversation. If that new head coach comes in and says, yes, I'll be your head coach. Yes, I'll take that autonomy. Yes, I'll take that full roster control, but I want to bring my quarterback in. So that ends up being the case, then you end up having to move on from Derek Carr. If the Saints wanted to do that, which there is the opportunity to do that, it's going to take a lot of restructuring. They're going to have to restructure veteran contracts like Demario Davis, like Tyrann Mathieu, like Cam Jordan, assuming that those guys don't up and surprise retire, but I don't expect that to be the case. Tyrann Mathieu has said publicly on social media that he hopes to play for another 2 years. He would love to finish his career here in New Orleans as well. So I don't know if I see any of that happening, but the retirement of Ryan Ramczyk, maybe you get one surprise retirement between one of those veteran defenders, maybe a Taysom Hill, depending upon how bad that injury is and all those other things. It would take that though. You have to kick the can down the road a little bit in order to be able to get there, but you could do that. Otherwise, you restructure Derek Carr, you save $30 million right there. And then you don't have to restructure all that stuff. You have some things that you can do, but then you're working on a $33 million overage as opposed to a $63 million overage. So there's all these different ways that the Saints can kind of go either way there. But in order for them to really do things when it comes to the Derek Carr move on kind of crowd, there's things that have to happen first. They have to have another option at quarterback, or they have to have a coach that says, I have a better option at quarterback, whatever that might be. So, but to alleviate them from all those tough decisions, $63 million on the wish list for the New Orleans Saints. On top of the $63 million, the New Orleans Saints could also use more draft picks. The Saints right now, after their loss to the Green Bay Packers, they didn't improve. They didn't move up in the draft order. They stayed at 10. But here's the thing. By having the 10th overall selection in the first round, assuming and based on what comp picks look like starting in the third round and all that, the Saints could have 5 selections in the first top 125 picks of this year's draft. That's really, really good. A first round, a second round, 2/3, 2/4, or whatever it is. So with the Saints being able to do that, yeah, that's right. First, second, 2/3, 2/4. So the Saints have a good collection of picks there, but they could have more. And so that's another thing that I would absolutely put on the list for the New Orleans Saints is more draft picks, because I do think still when it comes to their short-term building strategies, the draft is going to be the way to go, right? Infuse more youth, cheaper contracts, all those other things. That's going to allow you to make some of the tougher decisions you're going to have to make with veteran contracts in 2026, 2027, so on and so forth. A couple of players, a place where they could absolutely help themselves in this year's draft, whether it's on the interior offensive line, whether it's on the interior defensive line, whether it's at edge, is going to be in this year's draft. So the other thing I have on the Christmas wish list here, reinforced trenches. I don't care if it's for the offensive line or the defensive line, ideally both. That should be a massive priority from the New Orleans Saints. If games are won in the trenches, the New Orleans Saints feel a long way away from winning. Let's just be real about what it is. And so whether it's the coaching, whether it's the personnel, whether it's the execution, whatever it might be, whether it's the scheme, reinforced trenches, better trench play will take this New Orleans Saints a much longer way. That's part of my, my bars that I'm writing there. You're welcome, for this Christmas. Look, without an interior offensive line, you'll never realize your opportunity to have a franchise quarterback, because even if you do have that franchise quarterback, if they're under pressure 50% of the time in games or in a half, which is what we've seen recently over the course of the last couple of weeks, you're not going to really be able to get the most out of that quarterback, nor are you, if you're trying to evaluate that quarterback, don't know that he's a franchise yet, you're not going to be able to find out. If you're running an offense like a wide zone offense and you need to be able to predicate your passing attack off of the rushing attack, and you don't have the right offensive line, you're never going to be able to get that rushing attack off the ground. And because of that, you'll never get the passing attack off the ground. That's been a big issue for the New Orleans Saints, who have continued to lack a counterpunch and have continued to be able to not be able to innovate, on offense with the injuries that they piled up all over the side, all over their offense. And really, the other part of reinforced trenches too is finding better depth players in case you have injuries on the offensive line. You don't have as much of a drop off. I love the way that like JD, Aaron Summers, Scott Shanley over with the New Orleans Saints say it though. Next man up, they're next man up for a reason. I do get that. So you're always going to have some level of drop off, but man, it would be good to just see better depth, really on both sides of the defensive line, both sides of the trenches, offensive line or defensive line. For the defensive line, I think it's that interior just constantly losing the line of scrimmage, getting pushed off, the amount of yards before contact, that the New Orleans Saints defense has given up when it comes to their run game makes it very, very tough to stop the run. Exhibit A being the Green Bay Packers, right? That was a very easy game to be able to look at that and go, oh, that's not working the way that it's supposed to work. Another thing that the New Orleans Saints could grab with more of those draft picks, and the final thing that I have on this Christmas wish list, and by the way, none of these are like priority, right? It's just like, hey, all the things. A big-bodied wide receiver that can take over a game. I think that the New Orleans Saints have game breakers once they come back healthy. So they'll get a little bit of that free agency by players returning from injury thing again this upcoming season in 2025 when they get Rashid Shaheed back, who can score from anywhere on the field. When they get Chris Olave back, who at his best can be a guy that ends up making some spectacular catches for you, helping you move the chains, making big plays, all that kind of stuff. But I think that the New Orleans Saints need a big-bodied, contested catch, dominating wide receiver that draws a lot of attention, and that even with that attention can fight and make those catches. The New Orleans Saints have not had that kind of presence since the best days of Michael Thomas, and boy, do they wish that they had that back. Maybe not necessarily Michael Thomas, considering how that all ended, but you want that. You think of like a T. McMillan over with the Arizona Wildcats, right? Tetairoa McMillan. Perfect example of the type of player that you could potentially bring in and say, that's your half of the field. Go out there and beat those little guys up over on the other side. Boom. That opens up the opportunities all around the rest of the offense as well in the passing game. So that's another guy that I think, or another thing rather, that I think the New Orleans Saints should have on their wish list. Coming up in tomorrow's episode, we appreciate you very much for being here. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you. It will be a post-Christmas crossover Thursday. Myself and your boy Q from over at Locked On Raiders had a ton of fun chopping it up, getting ready for this Sunday's matchup between the Las Vegas Raiders and the New Orleans Saints. Two teams limping to the finish line, but still trying to get a full evaluation of the talent that they do and potentially don't have. We're going to break all of it down in tomorrow's episode, and what I promise you is a very, very fun crossover Thursday. Thank you very much, as always, for making us your first listen. For your second listen, go and check out Locked On NFL. And we appreciate you so much, whether it's your first time or your next time, for making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.